Hello guys, I'd like to share my experience with feeding my koi carp live food. Some of you that keep koi carp like I do always like to give our fish some variation and a diet that simulates what they normally get in the wild. Now remember that koi carp spend the whole day in the natural environment, grubbing around on the bottom of the pond or river or lake, wherever they are, and feeding on live food of different types, including water grubs, mollusks, small snails, you name it. And they use the whole day grazing on these stuff. Live food is actually important in a fish's diet because even though the pellet food that you can buy contains most of the nutrients that the fish needs, you should also be aware that these dried foods are not very rich in some particular antioxidants and some particular vitamins. These are in good quantity in live food. The problem with buying dried food is that when these insects or grubs are dried or frozen down or killed, essentially, from the moment that animal dies, these antioxidants begin to disappear and the vitamins begin to degrade. That's why it's good to feed your fish with live food. Now there are a lot of options out there, but I'd like to share what I've been using. Now this is what I use. Feel free to copy it. I personally use this method. And what do I use? Here. They are just normal mealworms. Now these mealworms, you can source them from your local pet handler. They use them to feed birds. People who keep birds and those who keep reptiles also use them. They're quite cheap. Here I have a kilogram of mealworms I bought a while ago, and you just put them in a container like this with some oats, ordinary breakfast oats, and that keeps them alive. Once in a while you cut a carrot or an apple or any other source of moisture, and that's what they use to get their moisture to keep them alive. Now note that these are the normal mealworms. Do not buy the giant or super mealworms as they're called. Those ones are quite large and quite aggressive. These ones are normal mealworms. Now some people have expressed fears that the mealworms can contain too much chitin in their exoskeleton that can give the koi problems with their digestion. I have never had that problem. Remember, these fish also eat insects and grubs that are well armored in their exoskeletons in the wild, and nothing happens with them. But of course, do not feed too much, and I'll show you a little trick to make sure that they don't get too much of the exoskeleton. These mealworms can last months in a container like this. If you want them to last even longer, you put them in the fridge. Remember to take permission from your family so there are no nasty surprises. But when you put them in a cool environment, their metabolism slows down. I did that before, but I stopped doing it now. They're just lying in the open bowl in my garage, and they can't crawl out. I feed them there. I do what's called gut loading. The advantage of gut loading is that whatever you want your koi to get, you can actually feed it to the mealworms, and 24 hours beforehand, and the worms will be full of that food. So I sometimes sprinkle vitamin powder. If I want my koi to get good carotene, I put carrots. It's good for their color. You can also feed them with virtually anything. Now, these mealworms molt, which means that they lose their exoskeletons quite a number of times in this larva stage, as you can see, before they become the pupae. The pupa stage is looks different. I can show you here. I have some pupa, and this is a typical pupa mealworm. It also lasts a while in this stage before it becomes a beetle. They become some black beetles. I've never had them turn into beetles because I harvest my pupa and I give them to the fish. Now, I mentioned a trick I use to stop my fish from getting too much exoskeleton. As you can see, these ones that I've selected here are either pupa stage worms or sort of lighter worms. And the reason they're lighter is because the worms have just shed their skin. I told you they shed their skins quite a number of times in their lifespan. So what I do every day when I sit down and relax in front of my fish pond is I have a pincette like this. They don't do anything, but if you don't want to get your fingers, if you're squirmish, your fingers into the worms, and you just peel around in it, and you'll see the ones that are whitish, the ones that have recently changed their skins or lost their skins. Now those ones that have lost their skins, the chitin is quite low in them, and then you're making sure the fish do not get too much exoskeleton. But of course it's just a preventive measure. I must mention that I've never had any problems with constipation in my fish, or you know, the normal ugly floating excrement you can see if you feed your fish with dried silk pooper, as you can buy in the fish shops. Now, another advantage of using live food is that it doesn't have the same amount of fat content per gram like the dried food. The dried food, like the dried mealworm or the dried silkworm pooper, which they also sell for feeding koi carp, is actually very, very fatty. And this fat is in such high concentration when the insect is dried that it can actually give your fish stomach problems, and you'll notice floating excrement around in your filter and in your fish pond, which actually does not look very good. So this is what I do, this is how I sort them out, and now watch me feed the fish. They love it, they rush it, and they guzzle it enthusiastically. Again, this is what I've been doing for a while with no problems. Feel free to try it. Your fish will be happy. This is a supplement feed. It's not the main feed. I use the commercial pellets you can buy, good quality grade, and I use live feed to supplement their diet and simulate what they get in the wild. It's good for their color, it's good for their growth, it's good for antioxidants, and it's good for vitamins. This is about the mealworms. I also use earthworms, and I'll make a video about that and how to keep them and how to feed your fish with them. As you see, the fish are still enjoying them, guzzling them up. A little handful once or twice a day is enough. The temperature is 21 degrees now, centigrade, and that's warm enough for them to eat live food. Actually, the protein content in this live food, if you check it on the internet, is under 20%, which is not even as high as some of the feeds you buy. But like I said, it's the vitamins, it's the experience the fish gets eating live food. Well, that's all for this video. Thanks for watching.